Welcome to lesson 8.3, where we're going to talk about if we have a zero or a negative number for our exponent. So let's start by looking at this table up in the top. Think about a as any number. What this first row means, if we have a number to the 0 power, it will always equal 1. Any number to the 0 power is 1. The next row says that if we have a number with a negative exponent, for example, 2 to the negative 1, we can take that 2, we can move it down, and it becomes 1/2. The other thing that we can do is if we do have a positive exponent on top, for example, 2 to the first power, we could move it down, and now the exponent becomes negative. So these last two rows, if we move a number to the other part of the fraction, so if it's on top of a fraction and then we move it down, it changes the sign. If it's on top and then we move it down, it still changes the sign, this time from positive to negative. So let's look at some examples where we put this into practice here. Example A, 3 to the negative 2 power. How do we use what we learned? What we can do is we can actually move the 3 to the second power to the bottom of the fraction, and it turns it positive. Then we know that 3 times 3 is 9, so 1/9 is the final answer. For letter B, we see that negative 7 has an exponent of 0. Any number with a 0 exponent is 1. We could do the same thing for letter E. 2/3 to the 0 power is 1. Or letter H. Negative 1 to the 0 power is still 1. Let's look at a few examples over here on the right. Letter C. We have 1/5 to the negative 1/2, to the negative second power. Another way that we can fix that exponent is we can flip our fraction to be 5/1. Now we have an exponent of positive 2. So 1/5 changes to 5/1, and then negative 2 changes to positive 2. Now we can say, what is 5 squared? Well, 5 squared is 25. Example F. We have an exponent of negative 2, but when we move negative 8 to the bottom of a fraction, it becomes positive 2. Negative 8 squared is 64. For letter I, 4 to the negative third power could also be written as 1/4 to the third power. 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. Two more examples, letter D and letter G. Letter D is an interesting one because it says 0 to a negative exponent. 0 cannot even have a negative exponent. If you typed it into your calculator, it would say error or undefined. The last example, 1/negative to the 2/3 power. We can move 2 to the negative third all the way up. Now it's on top of the fraction, like a regular whole number. 2 cubed is actually 8. So that's a summary of how we can use all of our exponent properties when it comes to 0 and negative 1. Let's slide down and take a look at this back page. Sorry you can't see part of it, but you can still see A through H. So we're going to work on using some of our rules of multiplying and a little bit of dividing to do some simplifying. Letter A, 6 to the negative fourth times 6 to the fourth. If we take negative 4 and 4 and we add those, we get 6 to the 0 power. Any number to the 0 power is still 1. If we have negative 2 and 3 both as exponents, we can multiply those together to get negative 6. But then 3 to the negative 6th can go underneath. We could end there. You could type 3 to the 6th power in a calculator if you needed to. Letter C is similar. This time it starts with a negative 4 as an exponent, but it's underneath the fraction. If we move that up on top, now it's positive. This is the same as just having 2 to the 4th as a whole number, which is actually 16. Letter D, we can subtract these exponents of 1 and 2. We can do negative 1 minus 2 to get negative 3. But we don't want to end with a negative exponent. We can move 5 to the negative third down and it turns it positive. If you type that into a calculator, 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. Four to the negative third power. We don't want a negative exponent, so we can move 4 to the third to the top. But 4 times 4 times 4 is actually 64. These two exponents in green, negative 3 and negative 1 for letter F. We can multiply those together and get positive 3. 5 to the third is actually 125. And our last couple of examples. If we have two numbers with the same base, we can actually add their exponents because we need to multiply those terms together. 5 plus negative 5 is 0. Any number to the 0 power is 1. And letter H. We can subtract these exponents. Negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. We can move 6 to the negative 4th power to the bottom of a fraction. Now we have a 1 on top. If you want, you could go a step further and type 6 to the 4th power into a calculator. So that will be it for part 1. We're going to cover example 3 in a separate video as part 2. Thanks for listening.